straight to the point, we wanted to do this for quite a while. And there's no real reason why we were going to do this one, except for the fact it kind of fit. But a viewer actually brought it up about a week ago, and sure enough, gave us the idea to do this one and another one, which is actually coming up next month. So we're going to be doing that. So we're going to find out what happens when two David Fincher films go battling as Seven takes on Zodiac. AJ, take it away.
Two David Fincher detective movies, technically.
Yes.
We're going to start with Seven. When Seven came out in 1995, it wasn't exactly instantly... it wasn't exactly as beloved as it is now. It was very off-putting to people, as you can probably imagine.
Oh, yeah.
The music video guy that made Alien 3 made a really gruesome, bloody, disgusting, guts-riddled crime movie. Covered in rain. But since then it has actually gotten the respect it deserves, and it's actually considered like one of the quintessential detective movies. So, with one of the most famous endings of all time. But we'll go one step at a time. The start of it is, well, actually the whole thing is kind of, it's been accused of being a little gimmicky with its concept. Obviously, it almost kind of does sound like something you'd hear in like a bad thriller novel or something. You have the old veteran cop who's a week from retirement, and you have the hot-headed young cop that's gonna take his place, and they're gonna hunt down a killer that's taken out his victims by way of the 7 deadly sins. But obviously it evolves into a lot more than that, and something a lot more brilliant than what it sounds. I think I heard one critic refer to the plot as something that sounds like it'd be out of one of those straight-to-DVD Clive Barker movies.
Yeah, kind of.
So the movie starts, and we actually meet Somerset. One of the first things I like to say about Somerset is... obviously, this was 1995 when Brad Pitt was really, really taking off, and he was like the heartthrob leading man. So naturally, he's first credited, and it's kind of his name's on it and stuff like that. But and it looks like Freeman's playing second fiddle to him, but really Somerset is the main character. We start with him and we end with him, and the whole story is mainly about how he is reacting to this case and how he's handling it. And how it's slowly building up to his retirement. When we first meet him, it's kind of hard to get a full grasp on him because he seems like the guy that, even though he's a veteran, might be a little overly sensitive or softened, I guess, because the first thing we see is he's at a crime scene and a dude's face down in a puddle of blood, and a dude starts to scold him because there was a child and a mother there too for the killing. And Somerset's only concern is if the child saw it or not. And the other detective there thinks that's totally ridiculous. But that's just the sensitivity in Somerset's character. And then Mills comes barging into the scene, and once they go outside, and Mills basically starts to act like he's jumping to conclusions, so Somerset's response is just simply, what are you talking about? You don't even know me. It's like he's really sensitive. But that's pretty much, for the rest of the movie, he's pretty much the what you'd expect from the hard-boiled, hardened veteran that's been more hardened than softened by the things that he's seen in his career. Now, as far as Mills is concerned, despite some of the really deeply dramatic places Brad Pitt has to go with this performance, Mills is pretty much the comedy relief for most of the movie. He's the one who pretty much has no idea what's going on. When they do, like, despite where he's gone with his career, he basically comes off as kind of an idiot when it comes to the depth of this crime and the things around him, particularly when it comes to the literature that John Doe is obsessed with. I don't know who the fuck Don Joe is.
I know who Don John is, but not Don Joe.
So, like when they, Somerset goes to the library in that really great scene where they put on the classical music and he goes through all the literature and then he gets all the books and he writes them all down and tells Mills, you need to check these out, because this is what we're dealing with. So, instead of reading those books, Mills gets the ones, like, when you were in school and you read, like, the Iliad and stuff, and the teacher just had, like, the yellow abridged version that just has all the main plot points in it. Those are the versions of the books that Mills went and got. And even, like, hides them from Somerset, so Somerset thinks he actually read the real ones. And we get a sense of that when, like, when he mispronounces the Marquis de Sade, and when Somerset mentions the Merchant of Venice, and his response is, I didn't see that one. And when they bring up Of Human Bondage, and he says, bondage? No, it's not what you're thinking. Now, one of the interesting things about this movie is, I don't know how a lot of people feel about this segment, but one of the important points in this movie is the relationship between him and his wife, Tracy, who is Gwyneth Paltrow. Which obviously is important later. But in the meantime, I guess it's interesting because it contradicts the dark, gritty gruesomeness of the rest of the movie. It's almost cringe-inducingly happy when we see Mills and Tracy together. Like when she calls up Somerset and asks him to dinner without even consulting Mills about it. So they go home together. Now, she answers the door like they knocked on it when Mills is basically going home. I don't know why they did that, but besides that, they go in and they have the thing where they do the cutesy thing where they call each other names, and then he asks how the kids are doing, and the kids are actually their dogs. And they have their crappy little apartment that's, their little love shack, so they don't mind anyway, even though the subway goes by and shakes everything like an earthquake. And she's really sensitive, like despite the fact that her husband's this hardened detective, she can never get used to the sight of a gun. Like when she sees Somerset still wearing his, she's like, and then when they're at the dinner table and Mills is telling a story and he says fucking, and then he looks at her and he's like, I'm sorry. Yeah, they have a sickeningly lovey relationship, but like I said, number one, I think that's to kind of counterbalance the darkness of the movie and also to make the big payoff ending all the more tragic. It seems, when you've seen the movie so many times, the build-up to what happens to her is so obvious.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's like, maybe sometimes you can look at it as, like, something disturbing, like, when he says, like, he mentions his wife's about something when he's shaving his chest to put the wire on, when they're taking John Doe out in the middle of nowhere, and then, when he says in the office, my wife can't even afford cable, when they're talking to John Doe's lawyer. He's making references to her after she's already dead when he doesn't know that she is. And it's kind of, like I said, when you've seen the movie so many times, it almost feels like it's blatant foreshadowing, but when you look back on it, it's actually kind of more disturbing the way we have scenes where he talks about her all, lovey-dovey after she's, had her head cut off and it's already in the box ready to be mailed to him. And he has no idea while he's, just mentioning her nonchalantly. And then the whole subplot where, I don't know, the subplot with her and the babe might be a little much. The whole scene with her and Somerset in the diner, the training day diner. Which was the diner in this before it was the diner training day, but whatever. Some other recognizable faces we have are Arlie Ermey as the captain is really good. He's basically doing the captain routine, and there's the really funny scene where he and Mills and Somerset are talking about the 7 Deadly Sins pattern, and he's just sitting at somebody's desk. We don't know who. And the phone rings. And just after one ring, he picks it up and says, "This isn't even my desk," and he just hangs it up on them. The district attorney is Richard Roundtree, who is good even though he doesn't get much screen time. It's probably the best part he had after Shaft. John C. McGinley is California, who's basically the head SWAT guy. He only has a couple of scenes, but they're big scenes. Richard Schiff, who people now know from, I think it's The West Wing he was on, is John Doe's lawyer. His very sleazy, I don't care what I'm getting away with as long as I win the case lawyer. There's a couple of recognizable faces in a very memorable scene. In one of many memorable scenes, the lust killing, which is horrific. It's Leland Orser and Michael Massey. Leland Orser you probably know from a bunch of things, and Michael Massey, who's mainly known for The Crow. He was Fun Boy, I think was the character's name. Leland Orser plays a character who was there at the whorehouse, and John Doe basically went to a leather store and made this strap-on with a giant blade attached to it, and forced Leland Orser to kill the girl that way. We see a brief picture of the thing, and we can only imagine. And it's this terrifying scene where Leland Orser's in the interrogation room, and he is completely freaking out over this, and hyperventilating. And it's one of the more frightening scenes of the movie, and it's after the killing has already taken place. A lot of the, now the interesting thing about this is a lot of the scenes are really grotesque and gruesome, but the movie isn't violent. Like, the only two violent things that happen in this movie are, John Doe hitting Mills in the face with the crowbar, and then John Doe getting shot in the head. That's the only on-screen violence we actually see. All the gore comes from the aftermath of what's already happened. So the movie is basically known for being this really gruesome, bloody, violent movie, but it's more so just the crime scenes, which obviously make up for it. The gluttony victim is, like, infamous now. The first victim who literally had to, he was basically force-fed by John Doe for 12 straight hours until his stomach exploded. And then there's one of the best scenes in the movie. This is one of those scenes where every time I see this scene, I wish I was watching the movie for the first time. Because I still remember the first time I saw it. I was really young when I saw this movie the first time too, so I was fucking scarred. The sloth victim.
Yeah.
That scene is fucking insane. They go in with California and the SWAT team, and those pine tree air fresheners are covering the ceiling. And the sloth victim is laying in bed, and he's almost completely decomposed. But the trouble is John Doe has just been basically subduing him in that same spot for a year. And taking, like, progressional pictures, too. And what California learns the hard way, by getting right up in the dude's face, is that the guy's still alive. And, like, his whole face is practically decayed off. Like, his lips aren't even there, and it's just his teeth, like, reaching out. California gets right up in his face, and the guy comes back to life and coughs. And they basically say he's basically bound to die. Like, they say his brain is practically mush, and he's not going anywhere. It's just, oh god, it's a psychotic scene is what it is. Andrew Kevin Walker was a mad genius when he wrote this. Now, something I'd like to talk about is, before we get into the actual John Doe character, the first run-in with John Doe, not him posing as the photographer, but, when they go to his apartment, it's a really surreal scene. Like, it's almost like some weird dream. And that's a weird way to look at it, but when you think about it this way, their plan is to go to the apartment. They finally figured out who it is. But before they can even get in, John Doe just appears at the end of the hallway. He didn't realize they were going to be there. So he shoots at them and runs away, and a chase happens. And the interesting thing about this chase is no one around reacts to it. I don't know if it's because the city is so crime-riddled. We have no idea what city they're in. It's never established. But he's chasing John Doe through these crowds and through these apartments and, like, down the steps where all these people are. And they both have guns out. And they're going through windows. John Doe is jumping around like he's superhuman. And just nobody's reacting. It's like this chase isn't even happening except in Mills's mind or something. And then they get down and they're having this confrontation and Mills is looking for him. There's like homeless people there that are just sitting there like it's a normal day watching this happen. And then he finally attacks Mills and gets the gun right in his face. I've always liked that shot where it's the close-up of the gun and we see just the silhouette of John Doe in the background with the rain. And Mills basically pleads for his life. And Doe just pulls the gun away, and it's like he just disappears into thin air. He's just gone. By the time Somerset gets there, there's like really no way he could have escaped from. He's just gone. That whole scene is really bizarre, but in a really great way. Like I said, it's almost like some weird dream when you're chasing somebody you just can't catch. And then the somewhat reveal where after they go back and they're investigating his apartment and they get called by him. And that's basically that's where a lot of people kind of get the idea of who it is. Because another thing that was criticized for being a gimmick was they wanted to keep Kevin Spacey's name off it completely, so it was a surprise when John Doe showed up, and it was him. There was, I was watching this movie once, with this girl, and when his voice came on, I asked her if she knew who it was, and her response was, "Isn't that the guy that's your favorite actor?" It's like, even if you don't really have a grasp on who he is, you know it's Kevin Spacey just by his voice.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, when I first saw the movie, I had no idea he was in it, and when it wasn't until he showed up at the police station that I knew.
Wow.
I don't know how I avoided it. I'm glad I did, but somehow I did not know before I saw it the first time. So it was awesome. Now, about John Doe when he's there in the flesh. Spacey giving one of my favorite performances that he's ever done. Probably right under Lester Burnham for his best. There's so many things that he does here that it's one of those things where you see a lot of it after you've seen it like 20 or 30 times. One of the things that I love is there's this scene after he's been captured and we go through the whole they never found a usable print because he cut the fingertips off, which we see in that awesome opening credit scene where Trent Reznor did like a tricked out version of Closer.
That's an awesome version of Closer too.
And it was the start of a beautiful relationship with Fincher and Reznor.
Yes.
But there's this really creepy shot where we know how interrogation rooms work, where it's glass and in the interrogation room you see a mirror and on the other side the cops see a window. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that he's looking at a mirror, John Doe is sitting in the interrogation room while he's talking and he's just making tea, and then he looks over and without even breaking eye contact, he just looks directly at Mills through the mirror. Like he knows exactly where he is. And there's obviously the lead-in where he claims, it seems, something is really off because it seems really sudden that he just shows up at the police station and says, well, I killed Envy and Wrath. They're out in the desert. Let's go get them. you know there's a higher plan going on. And we get the Tracy setup where they say, the blood all over his shirt was his own blood and then an unidentified person. Because by the time he shows up at the police station, the thing with Tracy has long since happened. So they go out, all the way out there, and they're basically looking for bodies. But we know something is wrong because John Doe's doing this whole scene of John Doe in the back seat and him doing his preachy thing and Mills trying to get to him and him trying to get to him in return. There's that scene. There's a couple of scenes here that I love, and they both involve Somerset looking in the rearview mirror. The first one is when they're getting close to the bodies. You know something big is about to go down because when Somerset looks in the rearview mirror and John Doe's being silent, he's just bouncing in the back seat like an excited child. And when he asks him, what's so exciting, he's like, it's almost here. And then there's that one moment where it's really creepy. It really just sends a chill down your spine. It's only there for a fraction of a second. It's when John Doe is going off on Mills and he's looking at him and he's screaming at him about... Because Mills said... Mills claims that John Doe kills innocent people. And that completely sets him off. And while he's screaming at him, Somerset looks in the rearview mirror. And it's like he can sense it because for a split second, while he's looking at Mills and screaming at him, his eyes dart to the rearview mirror and look at Somerset. Like he knows he was looking at him in the mirror. I've always loved that shot. And then, like I said, we get to one of the most famous endings in movie history now. I don't know how many times it's been parodied. A lot of people like to give Brad Pitt shit for this scene because they think what's in the box is one of the most imitated lines you can hear in quite some time. But I think everything in this scene just really builds up to the... This is one of those movies where they do a holy shit they went there thing and it actually works.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, as far as whether or not he actually kills John Doe, there was I had read somewhere that there was a script where Mills didn't do it. But Brad Pitt specifically said, I'm not going to do the movie unless he does. Hence, we get him killing John Doe hard. There was one ending, and it's great. Fincher talks about it on the DVD commentary, which is really great if you ever get there. The original ending that they actually had at a test screening. It's great to hear him tell the story too. They had a test screening, and at that time, the very end of the movie was obviously Mills shoots John Doe in the head, and then he shoots him a bunch more times, and then walks away. And gets arrested, and then we have the Casablanca shot with Freeman and Army walking away. The original ending was Mills shooting once, and the screen goes black, and the movie ends. At that test screening, Fincher was standing in the back, and two middle-aged women were walking out. And he swears one of them looked at the other and said, "The people who made that movie should be murdered." So, obviously they went with the ending we see now, and there's actually been another theory as to, since we never do actually see Tracy's head, and we only know because John Doe says, "I took a souvenir," and says that it was her head. But we never actually see what was in the box, and it's never actually confirmed, because when Mills says, "What's in the box?" and Somerset just tries to clear up the situation by saying, if you murder a suspect, there's nothing we can do, but that just basically Mills taking it as a yes, that's what it is. Yeah, obviously I would say so, but there are theories that I've heard two theories. Apart from the head, it could either be John Doe went as far as to cut her fetus out and put it in there.
Sounds like something he would do.
Possibly, but the other theory, to my understanding, is Mills reacted that way because what's in the box is a DVD copy of Meet Joe Black.
Ouch.
But that's just for laughs, of course.
That was funny.
Also, if you get a chance, go to, well, you're already on YouTube, obviously.
Yes.
Another really great parody of this scene, not that I want to undermine the great dramatic factor of the scene, but search a video called Morgan Freeman's Unboxing Videos. And you will get a real gem of a video that is a parody of the end of Seven. So, yes, it really pushes the envelope, especially in the mid-90s. I'm really surprised it was released as is. Especially with a director that only had music videos in Alien 3 on his resume. But the whole movie and the way it comes together is just a work of genius. And it's really a masterwork. I think it's Fincher's best movie to date. The Social Network gives it a run for its money, but I'd say this is still Fincher's big, great, you know. And like I said, Andrew Kevin Walker's script is just, you know, just fantastic and really twisted genius. However, 12 years later, he did come up with another movie that people consider to possibly be his magnum opus, which is Zodiac. Which obviously is set in the era of the late 60s and then 70s. Which takes us all the way to 91, but it mainly takes place in the 70s and the 60s. But we open with the classic logos. We have like the classic Paramount logo and the classic Warner Brothers logo, and we begin on the 4th of July, where we have the great scene where this might have been the movie that introduced me to Donovan's song Hurdy-Gurdy Man. I'm not totally sure, but this great opening where Mike Mageau is out with his girlfriend, and she's murdered and he's shot multiple times but survives. And that sets off a whole thing where the killer calls up and says, I just shot a couple and I killed this couple before, and it turns out to be a series of murders possibly committed by the same person, but eventually went unsolved, more or less. If you ask me, it pretty much was solved, but it's technically things got in the way. But the movie kind of follows it from two different perspectives, because we have Mark Ruffalo's Dave Tosca, who was the inspector that got obsessed with the case, and Jake Gyllenhaal, who was the cartoonist who also got obsessed with the case, who actually don't even meet till like halfway through the movie, formally.
Mm.
And they both have the connection to Paul Avery, who is the drunken reporter played by Robert Downey Jr., who is, it's considered one of his best performances. So, we start off and we follow Gyllenhaal as if he's the main character, and then about halfway through it kind of shifts to Ruffalo's story. So much so that we almost kind of forget about Graysmith for a while, but then eventually they merge and start to work together for the third half of the movie. There's a whole lot of characters in this movie, and a whole lot of familiar faces to go with them. Like, apart from our main three cast, we have Anthony Edwards, who is Ruffalo's partner, who is, he's the loyal partner who's always there and always has the animal crackers for him, and always, you know, gives him the other half of his BLT, and they have that great buddy-buddy relationship, along with the, even when they're at the crime scenes, like the guy just nonchalantly referring to, oh, by the way, happy birthday, and he's like, man, it's your birthday today? And then they say, so you're going to take the scene or are you going to take the body? And he's like, it's your birthday, I'll take the body today. We have the sergeant played by Elias Koteas, who works in Vallejo, where one of the first killings is, where the 4th of July killing was. Shit. Okay, I'm drawing a so many people on the cast list, I gotta figure Donal Logue is the other one in Napa who helps them out. Then you have a lawyer played by Brian Cox, who has a really funny scene where he talks about how he was on an episode of Star Trek and how that's his big claim to fame, even though he's trying to get more into acting. But he's basically like the one person that the Zodiac will talk to. So they have to like, they have him hiding in the back seat and take him to the news station, and he's basically he's there to try to calm everything down, but it's almost like, he's also, the Zodiac here is also reminiscent of the Son of Sam a little bit. The way he screams and talks about the headaches and all that. Which is a frightening scene in itself when we haven't even seen him. He's just talking on the phone when we're in a totally safe place. Philip Baker Hall is here as the handwriting expert, who basically tries to match the letters with other handwriting to kind of help, but that's always shows them dead ends. After a while, we're introduced to Chloe Sevigny, who ends up becoming... She starts off as a blind date for Gyllenhaal, and then since the movie progresses through time so seamlessly, she eventually becomes his wife, and they have 2 children, and somewhere in the Ruffalo portion of the movie that happened. One of the best in the cast is John Carroll Lynch, who most of you probably know as Norm Gunderson from Fargo. Yes. Who basically plays the main suspect, Arthur Lee Allen. And there is this scene where they interrogate him. And it's a lot like I talked about with Tim Rollins' performance in Mystic River. Half the time he plays it really innocent, and the other time he plays it really, really guilty. Like, when you can just tell he's really playing up the innocence. Like, when they slightly suggest he might be the Zodiac, his response is like, "That is just horrible. You should never say anything like that." But then there's that one delivery where they've just interrogated him and they're getting to the end. And he just goes stone-faced and just says, "I'm not the Zodiac, and if I was, I certainly wouldn't tell you." And that's when you realize, oh my god, I think this guy is guilty. And then you have the captain, who is Daryl Murray, who is really good. He's always really underrated. I always particularly like that scene where all the evidence against Arthur Lee Allen turns out to be nothing matches. So Tosca gets really fed up and says, I'm not sure if I'm so pissed off because I wanted it to be him or if it's because I just want this to be over. And then Mulroney's just standing there and he's like, "What do you want? Some time off? Hug." And then we have an actor named Charles Fleischer who plays a guy named Bob Vaughn in one of the most frightening scenes of the movie. Nothing even really happens in this scene, but it's one of the most chilling scenes in like a long time. Probably one of the most chilling scenes in a Fincher movie, and that says something. One of Donaldo's biggest suspects, the guy he really wants, is a guy named Rick Marshall, who made a makeshift movie poster with handwriting on it that matches the Zodiac's handwriting. So he was friends with a projectionist. This projectionist is Bob Vaughn. So Graysmith says, "I'm going to meet up with this Bob Vaughn and see if he can tell me about Rick Marshall and I can get information on him." So Vaughn pulls up in his car in the rain and he's like, "We can go to a diner," and Vaughn's like, "You know what, why don't we just go to my house?" So Graysmith's like, "Oh, okay." He's perfectly cast Jake Gyllenhaal. Of course, he's naive enough to say, "Oh, okay, I'll get in your car and go to your house." So they get there, and they're in his kitchen, they're making tea, they're having a nice little conversation. And then he says, "Well, the reason we think it's Rick Marshall is because his handwriting on these posters matches the Zodiac's handwriting exactly. It is the closest we've ever come," is what Philip Baker Hall said. And Bob Vaughn looks at him and he says, "Oh, well, you don't really need to talk to Rick Marshall because I'm the one that makes the posters." Nice. And then he says, "So do you want to come down to the basement and take a look at what you're looking for?" And he goes down into the basement, and he's basically being lured into the darkness. And Vaughn claims to live alone, but we're hearing footsteps right up on the floor right above them. And Graysmith says the line, "Are you sure there's nobody else in the house?" And Vaughn's just not even talking to him now. And Graysmith finally gets his wits about him and hightails it out of the house. But that scene is really... And it always sets up the theory that obviously, that sets up that there might have been two of them. Which adds a whole different thing to the case that was never really much explored, at least that they show in the movie.
Like Billions too?
If I had to venture a guess myself, I'm not a detective or anything, I've seen a lot of detective movies though, I would say the Zodiac, one of the two started and then the other was more of a copycat. But that would just be my theory.
The other ghost face that has been throughout the Scream series, the really chilling thing about that scene, and it gets me every time too, is you bring up Charles Fleischer. And for those of you that don't realize, Charles Fleischer is the voice of Roger Rabbit.
Yes.
That makes it even more chilling thinking about that.
So, he's also the doctor in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
But no, apart from those, besides that, the killings are really, really frightening scenes.
Definitely.
The opening is a great scene, like when he drives up and he's right behind them and he has like his high beams on, and then he drives away and they're like, oh well, that was creepy, but we're okay now. And then they hear like tires squeal, and then he comes back, and then that's when he kills them.
Like they heard each other somehow.
And then there's this scene blows my mind, and it's really, really, it's a really frightening scene. Once again, I say this a lot in horror movie reviews. One of my favorite things in horror movies is when they break down that barrier and show you that you're not safe in the daytime.
Yep.
And that scene, it's like 20 minutes into the movie, and that couple is just having a nice afternoon by the lake. The sun is shining, it's a beautiful day, everything is perfect.
Yep.
And the Zodiac just walks up to them in broad daylight, in a black mask, and in all black, with rope and a knife. And he ties them up and robs them at gunpoint. And then he's getting ready to leave, and he's like, so just so people, in case people ask us, was that gun really loaded? And he shows them that it was really loaded. And then just as they think he's about to leave, he just starts to stab them. He stabs the girl to death. That actually becomes a pattern, obviously, like it was on the 4th of July. He gets so caught up in killing the women, he forgets to completely kill the men, and they end up surviving. So, and then there's the scene with, Aone Skye has an uncredited cameo, which is a connection because she's Donovan's daughter in real life. So, that scene where she gets basically pulled over by him, and he's like, you have a loose tire, I thought I should fix that for you. And of course he just loosens it. And there's the scene where she gets in, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize you had a baby with you. And it's like, oh, the Zodiac has a soft spot for babies. She'll be safe. So they're driving for a while, and then she's just finally saying, so how far are we going to go? And his response to that is, before I kill you, I'm going to throw your baby out the window. And the scene fades to black. But somehow she and the baby managed to escape. But that scene could have gone a lot darker. But
yeah.
But yeah, and then on top of being able to be frightening like that, it also flawlessly evokes like the feel of like the 60s and 70s cop movies, like Bullet and Serpico. It's so in the newsroom stuff actually has got a lot of All the President's Men in it too. The Paul Avery stuff. Yeah, I guess we should talk about. I haven't talked about Downey yet. This is considered one of his best performances, and he is really, really good in it. But he is basically doing the Downey thing that he is very much known for now. This was he played Tony Stark right before he played Tony Stark. Like his deliveries with when he's talking to Graysmith, and while he's doing that doodle of the Zodiac of how he was by the lake that day, and it just catches Avery's attention, and right in mid-sentence he just says, "Sweet Mother of Christ, what are you doing?" And then the scene where they're at the bar, and Graysmith orders the drink, which brilliantly has Crystal Blue Persuasion playing in the background. And it's just, the blue drink just kind of sits there at the bar, and they're just talking about the case, and then just finally Avery says, this can no longer be ignored. What is that you're drinking? He's being extremely Downey in this performance, but, it does really work for the character, though. He was perfectly cast. One of the great things about this movie is how it manages to do the pacing and the editing. Like, it reminds me a lot of JFK. How it goes through this whole case and all of that, but it's not. There's really no action scenes. There's no, like, you know, it doesn't have a big chase scene like Bullet, or it doesn't have, like, you know, big performances like All the President's Men. It's very, very grounded and basically extremely fact-based. And there's, like, the big climax of the movie is really, really, really small and quiet. It's basically, apart from the fact where they finally find Mike Michaud and he manages to identify Arthur Lee Allen exactly. He says, like, an 8 on a scale of 10. The thing Graysmith says to Chloe 70 when she's saying, you know, how long will this go? When will this end? And Graysmith says, I just need to be able to look in the Zodiac Killer's eyes and know that it's him and know that he's guilty. And Graysmith's last scene in the movie is him walking into the store that Arthur Lee Allen works in. And he just stares at him and then walks out. And that's, you know, and that's just as powerful as, like, a big, you know, confrontation.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I love the way that it flawlessly passes through time without even really having to beat us over there with it. It's not really always shoving in our faces, like, you know, a year. There's the really great moment where they show us how much time has passed when they show us the sped up process of that building being built, and how it starts off as like a construction site, and then by the end of the montage it's like an entire gigantic building with all the lights turned on. And that's I think that's supposed to show a year. It ended up being. Yeah, this was also the start of like Fincher's. Fincher was really, like, gritty and down to the bone with, like, Seven and Fight Club and stuff like that. But I think Zodiac kind of started a bit of an elegance. Like, this was kind of the start of the Fincher that made Benjamin Button and The Social Network, and to an extent, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo kind of has both. Mm-hmm. I never really thought about that till now, but yeah, that's pretty much what it is. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is Zodiac meets Seven, really. So, yeah, and it's one of those things where the movie is like almost 3 hours long. It's like 240, but every single scene has a vital piece of information. Yes. That's another thing that JFK is like, and JFK breaks 3 hours. That wouldn't have been a bad companion piece either. But yeah, as great and brilliant as Zodiac is, and it's just great. It's just a great aesthetic. Like, now, to Seven's disadvantage, as brilliant as it is, and, you know, just with the kind of movie it is and the way it is, it kind of has to be this way because it's so gritty. As far as appearance, Seven is pretty ugly.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be because it's an ugly setting, you know, and it's, you know, all of that. Zodiac just has this really, like I said, it has a real elegance in its appearance. And how it actually looks, somehow, some way, he managed to shoot it in a way where it actually looks like a movie that came from the 70s. It's also worth noting, obviously, Toschi, who, Ruffalo's character, was the inspiration for both C McQueen's character in Bullet and Dirty Harry. And there's actually the scene where they're watching Dirty Harry in the theater, and Toschi is just kind of criticizing it. Like, he can only watch it so far, and then Ray says, they're talking about how Harry Callahan really cleaned that scene up, and Toschi's response is just, yeah, well, I guess there's no such thing as due process. They used the school bus plot point in the end of Dirty Harry. It was a whole thing that the Zodiac Killer did, where he said he was supposedly going to shoot out the tire of a school bus and then pick off children as they ran out. To which he then said the cops should be killed for believing he'd actually do something like that. So, the two big differences is Zodiac is more from the obsessed detective perspective, whereas Seven is more about getting inside the mind of the killer, which was off-putting to a lot of people and still kind of is, especially how deep we get in there. It's also, I guess it's also worth showing you. It's worth noting that this DVD is actually kind of like one of John Doe's notebooks.
That's awesome.
If you're interested in what the inside looked like, and you happen to have this DVD. Yeah. So, as great as they both are, I prefer 7. But, I think in time, this might be one of those cases where in time, Zodiac might be considered the more prestigious one. But, yeah, as far as, I mean, they're both, it's kind of hard to say exactly why I would take one over the other, but there's, not to mention the fact that my favorite actor has a major part in 7, but apart from that, I don't know, maybe I just prefer, maybe I'm weird and just prefer the killer side of it to the detective side, I don't know. But, yeah, I've seen 7 so many times, and it just never gets old, and it's always, I always wish I'm seeing it for the first time, because it's just so, it's one of those movies that actually goes out to be shocking and is, effectively, without being cheap or resorting to anything that's compromises the greatness of the story itself. So I think we're done here.
Okay, so ends another edition of Versus. Next week, we're going to go all into dumb gym rats. That's it. That's what I'm going to say. Dumb gym rats. That's going to be your final Versus for July, and then we kick it into August and beyond. So, AJ, any parting words?
That's it.